I'm Kelly, and I'm part of Leadership Class 37, Leadership Tyler Class 37. And if you know anybody in Leadership Tyler, one of the first things that they'll say right after they tell you what class number they're in is that they were the best class ever. Our class is creating a pretty good argument against that because we're the only class with historical record to prove it, outside of maybe the COVID year, which was an exceptional year all by itself. We're the only class that is on target to have a 100% graduation rate. So if you're in Leadership Tyler 37, we are the best class ever and are setting the example for all future classes. And I have the mic, and I'm part of Leadership Class 37, so I get to say things like that.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you my goal tonight is not to talk very much because this guy is going to blow your mind with everything that he has to say. Every time I've met with Henry, I've learned something new about Tyler, and he's expanded my knowledge base. And so we talked the other day, and he was worried. He's like, I just hope I don't bore these people. And I was like, Henry, when you talk, people are engaged in what you have to say. And so you are not going to be, I promise you are not going to be bored tonight. But I want to take you back about it. Henry and I have known each other about a year. Through some other things that were going on in my life, I was having conversations with people about who do I need to talk to find out about the history of Tyler. Some things that have happened in the past in Tyler. Who would you recommend? And conversation after conversation, only one name came up. If you want to know anything about the history of Tyler, you need to connect with Henry Bell. I connected with Henry Bell. We had coffee at the Foundry. So Henry gets to work at about 4 a.m. He gets to work really early. And so we met at the Foundry at 7 because that's when they open. And so he walked down from the chamber office. He doesn't drink coffee, and so he joined me. I had coffee. But he began to share with me some of his knowledge about the history of Tyler. I was completely blown away. That led to, I don't know how many times we've met for coffee. I've actually met him in his office multiple times, and every single time I learned something new about the city of Tyler. And I love that. I'm a history buff, especially as I'm getting older. I love history. I love the history of the town that I'm living in. And so I really think you're in for a treat tonight. And so I want to introduce my good friend Henry Bell, and we're gonna have a kind of an interview, but mainly my job is to say, and what else? And what else? And what else? And to make sure we're kind of on track. But before we get into kind of the history of Tyler, Henry himself and his family have a kind of a unique history here. So I'd like for you to start with that, because I know on both sides of your family, you go back 5 or 6 generations. So can you just talk a little bit about your history here in Tyler, and then we'll get into the actual history.
Okay, and even though I go back, my family goes back 5 generations, that does not mean that I was alive for all 5 of those generations. So don't try to guess how old I am, because I didn't live through it all, but Kelly's right about that. So I'm a 5th generation Tylerite. I have family members who are now the 8th generation Tylerite, and that's about as far back as you can go back to the beginning of when Tyler was founded. So I had a great grandfather come in 1840, and the town was not even designated or incorporated until 1846. So it's before it was even began. And he's right. It's on my mother's family and my father's family, 2 different sides of Tyler. So you have to be careful. I'm kind of scanning the crowd. There's probably several of you that are related to me that I don't even know you're related to me. To give you an example too, on one side of the family, my grandmother and grandfather were 5th cousins to each other. So I'm double related to a lot of family names that you might recognize. So it's hard for me to keep up with. But because of that history, so much of the history I know is from storytelling. And from a lot of the history I've gotten is from different family members, from stories, from letters, from all kinds of different things that the families put out there over the years, and it just kind of piqued my interest.
So how far back does your family history go? When was your first family member, when did they arrive in Tyler?
1840. So my great-great-grandfather Bell was married to a Marsh family in North Carolina. And when Texas was the new frontier, you know, wasn't even part of the United States, of course, but was the new westward land that was the new promised land. So his father-in-law sent him to Texas to find out what it was all about, to see if it was a good place for the rest of the family to come back and live. So he came out here and somehow ended up in Tyler, and liked what he saw in Tyler, and he laid claim to the family farm, which at that time was from where Broadway and Front Street is, all the way where the Catholic Cathedral is, all the way to Broadway and Houston Street, and then all the way to Palace Street. And that was the Bell Farm. It later got developed and subdivided. Actually, my great-great-grandmother did that. And the house that was the Bell House was still there until the 70s. And a family named Sabota, who lives in the Gresham area, moved that house. It is actually in Gresham now on Beddingville Road. I actually lived in the house till I was 4 years old, so the generations kept on then. So he came, and he was a farmer like most people were, but he was also real instrumental in the downtown area. He was one of the first city aldermen, which was the predecessor to city council, and he owned a bar. And if you go back and look at his records, to get a liquor license to have a bar in Tyler at that time, from Smith County actually, you had to qualify, you had to reach certain levels, and depending how high you qualified depended on how strong a liquor you could serve. Well, he had the highest amount you could possibly serve.
Of course he did.
So that's about all I know about that family member, because he sent word, and I guess you send word on a horse, and however time that took to send the rest of the family to get here. And by the time they got here, he had died, and he was only 36 years old. And nobody can ever tell me in all the stories and everything how he died. I'm convinced he got shot in a saloon. Sounds good anyway, so who's going to debate that? So we're going to go with that. They got here, my great-great-grandmother, whatever number it is, decided she was going to stay, raise the two Bell boys, which was, one of them was my great-grandfather. And then just a little side story, I'll tell you a little bit more about her later. I don't want it to sound like this is a family story, even though so much of the history I know comes from family. So you'll hear me refer to family from time to time, but there's a reason. You'll see the connection there as we go through this. So.
Yeah, so speaking of family, how many of you guys have walked around the square and have seen the Walk of Fame or the history of Tyler squares? If you're over on the Regions Bank side of the square, there's about 3 panels in a row that have the Henry Bell name on them. And one of those says that he was known as Mr. Tyler. Was that your grandfather or great-grandfather?
That was my grandfather.
So
I don't know if many of you were at the State of the County this week, but Shannon Dekas, who's the chair of the chamber, referred to me as Mr.
Yes.
Tyler. No, that's my grandfather. He was so Mr. Tyler that I have a letter from some family archive things addressed to Mr. Tyler, Texas, that got delivered to him. Now, the only catch to that is the postmaster at that time happened to be his brother.
Well, so I'm in favor with what Shannon says. So I think that, and especially because it's a family tie, and with your history and knowledge of the city of Tyler, Henry is our current day Mr. Tyler. And so he just celebrated 35 years with the chamber. He's become a really good friend of mine. I'm excited that he's here tonight to share what he knows about our great city. And so for the most part, I'm turning it over to Henry. My job is to keep an eye on the time because I want to make sure you guys are going to get a break in a little bit so you can go refill your beer and grab some more pizza or whatever. But so your family arrived in 1840, but they weren't the first people in Tyler. So can you talk, let's start going through the history of Tyler. How did people find this place? Where did they come from? What attracted them here? What can you tell us about that?
So, yeah, the Americans, of course, weren't the first one here. And so Natives to the area were the Caddo and the Cherokee Indians. They've been here many, many years longer than any of us or our descendants have been here. I was back going through some notes today, and I had to warn you, it's bad if I do go back through notes and if I read more history, because then my mind starts going, no, that's not right, yeah, that's right. But if I'm back to, supposedly, the first record of any Indians here was in the year 80 AD. So that's a long, long time. So Indians, and Kelly did mention this, but when I normally give this presentation, it's usually whatever Wendy says I can, 30 to 45 minutes. And so I kind of break it down. And so there's 4 main words that kind of go along with the history of Tyler in my presentation. And it's water, war, roses, and oil. And so I refer back to those 4 things. Well, water is always at the beginning and always at the end. Because why? Because we can't live without water. And we always have to have water. And water is a big part of our history. And we're very blessed in East Texas to have the water that we do have. So that's actually what attracted the Indians to Tyler. And in particular, they settled in their center of their Smith County settlement was in what is now downtown Tyler, because there's a lot of water in downtown Tyler through natural springs. I went back and looked at some records today. It said there were 40 natural springs. That didn't sound like very many to me. I think there's a lot more than that. But over a period of time, the springs have caused havoc with construction and other things. But there's a lot of natural springs in the downtown area, and that's where Spring Street on the east side of the courthouse gets its name. It's because that's where a lot of those natural springs are. And I don't know if you still can today or not, but you know, there's a tunnel beneath that part of the road between the jail and the current courthouse, which, by the way, they're going to build a new tunnel with the new one, so it won't be the same one. But if you go down in that tunnel, it used to say if you get real quiet, nobody says a word, you can hear running water. And supposedly it's some of those springs. So that's where the water first comes in. You're going to hear me refer to water several more times because it's so important. It's still very important to our part of the state because we have a natural good supply of water. Not all parts of the country, not all parts at all of Texas have that. So there's some interesting stuff that's going on with water continually. And we've been real lucky with our community leaders and forefathers in planning years and years out to make sure we have enough water.
Yeah, so I know in one of our conversations before, you talked about the water and the lakes that used to be inside the city limits of Tyler. And I think there's more than one street name. You mentioned Spring Street, but there's more than one street name that is named after the water that was here.
Well, yes, there is, but not particularly downtown. And I'll get to that in a minute. But speaking of the street names in downtown Tyler have a kind of a cool history to them as they were named. And I mentioned that my family got here in 1840, 1846. If you know your Texas history, Texas was its own country from 1836 to 1846. 1846 is when it became a state. So a lot of the history in our area and our whole state is, of course, when we were a country and beyond that, because the state of Texas has such a rich history of settlement from different countries, thus the Six Flags over Texas, Spain, France, Mexico, and so forth. So we earned our independence in the war with Mexico, and were able to last as a country for 10 years. And I say last because, as you know, or you may not know, once we won our independence and became an independent country in 1836, Texas wasn't the same shape that we know it now, because even though we won the war with Mexico, we were still in dispute with Mexico as to the border. And so Mexico still claimed all the way up to San Antonio and all into that western part of Texas, and we said no, Rio Grande. That's where it is. So back and forth. And the problem the country of Texas had, they spent so much money winning its independence, they were literally broke. So that's what started the movement towards statehood, is that the country of Texas finally went to the United States and said, would you consider annexing us as a state? Because we need somebody to pay our bills, and we need somebody to help us with this Mexico dispute. So that's really what drove it from our point of view. The country was expanding westward, so there was a desire to continually add to the United States. However, it was controversial at that time because we were in a slave, non-slave situation in the country, and you had half the states were legally slave states, half of them weren't. And nobody wanted to add any more states to tip the scale on which one was the most. So, and this started with a water question. So this is usually how I go. I go off on these tangents and then I get
I was
back.
about to jump back in because I know one of our conversations. There's a street over. It's near downtown. It's not in downtown, but it's Lake Street that you mentioned to me before.
Yes, well, actually, there's two streets over there. So at one time, the water supply for the city of Tyler was in a small lake called Victory Lake. Does anybody know where Victory Lake was? Does anybody know where Turtle Creek is down from the medical center from UT Health, down in that area? Turtle Creek was where Victory Lake was. And that was the water supply for a long time. So that's where Lake Street gets its name. And there's two Victory Streets that come off of Donnybrook. It's a double street that dead end into Victory. So Victory Lake was there. Medical Center Hospital came about in the early 50s. And you can see pictures, historical pictures of the hospital being built. And you still see that lake still there.
Oh, wow.
And at some point, we decided to plug it up and not use it as a lake anymore. So that's where those street names go, but before I get back to that Texas history, I'll go back to those street names because I'll forget about that. So at one time,
about street names unless you're about to answer it right now.
No, yeah. So these are kind of fun with the street names. It's history is something that's always kind of caused me to be curious and wonderful and wondering why things are the way they are. I think most people are that way, and that's why we try to teach our children to have curious minds. And thank goodness we have Google today, because that helps with a whole lot of it, looking stuff up. But all the streets in downtown Tyler at one time, other than Spring Street, were named after trees. And a few of them changed over time. So you've still got Elm Street, and you've still got Bodark Street. Bodark's a tree, if you didn't know that. I grew up going to a church, me and James Wynn and some other people, and I always wondered why our churches had a funny street name that looked like it was from France. But it's Bodark. Bodark's a tree, and there's a reason that it was named that right there. So you also had Hickory, Cherry, and Birch Streets. Okay, so both Ferguson and Irwin were one of those two. I can't remember which is which. One was Cherry, which one was Hickory. But as the town grew, and remember you're talking a little small town around what's now the square, dirt streets, saloons, horses. There was a couple of prominent people in town who had farms way out in the country that would give reason to a lot of people to need to go out to that farm, either to buy products, or the farmers would have people out for gatherings and stuff like that. So they needed a way to show the rest of the citizens of Tyler, and you got to remember this is about 900 people then, how to get to those farms. So they renamed one of the streets to Ferguson so you could get to the Ferguson farm, and one of them Irwin so you could get to the Irwin farm, both going westward. Westward. So that's where those streets got their names. Now, the thing that is hysterical to me, Mr. Ferguson's farm, the boundary of it, started about where First Baptist Church is. So you didn't have to go very far to get to that. But remember, you were walking, you weren't driving, and you were riding a horse. And before First Baptist Church, he lined his farm with bodark trees. So there really were some bodark trees on Bodark Drive, and until I think the last time First Baptist did a remodel, the last bodark tree didn't last much longer. But bodark trees are very sturdy, hard trees. They're what Indians make their bows with, or if there are still bows still made. So anyway, The other street that had another name at one time is College, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's just a little teaser. College had another name as well.
Okay, so I failed to mention this earlier, and I apologize, but the reason we're doing this tonight, there's two reasons. It was our last Leadership Tyler class day today. We graduate next month at the State of the City event, which is a chamber event. But the reason we chose this day, because it's April the 11th, and the first legal action to establish Tyler as a city happened in the state legislature, on April 11th, 1846, even though we weren't incorporated until a few years later. But Tyler's official birthday, legally speaking, it was April 11th, 1846, which was the same year that, as Henry mentioned, that Texas became a state, right, after we were our own country. So as we are moving through this history, you talked about the water and the Indians, and you mentioned a little bit about the Six Flags over Texas and that first war. So pick it up from 1846, and I think we're still on the theme of war as we move forward, because not too long after that was the Civil War. So can you pick the story up from 1846, after we became a state, and kind of take us through what the next phase of what war looked like in Texas and what that did to Tyler?
So when both Tyler and Smith County are celebrating that birthday together. They're both incorporated at the same time, and Smith County was actually a part of a huger county called Nacogdoches County for a long time, but it was broken out into Smith. And so Smith County is named after Colonel General James Smith, who was later a general in the Texas-American War. But he's famous for a couple of things, and by the way, we still have some family here, Smith family here, that's a relative of his, so there's still some family for him. But one of the things that was one of the coolest things that I learned about him, even though it's not terribly important, is that back then each division of the military was able to design their own uniforms. And so he designed his uniform, and on it he put a single star. And later, the state legislature liked that single star so much, they took that star and adopted it as the Lone Star of Texas. And that particular star is the one that we find in our flag. Not that it doesn't just look like any other flag, but we're responsible for it for coming from this area. And then I usually tell a long version of how Tyler got its name, and most people know that we're named after the 10th President of the United States, John Tyler. And there's a lot of fun side stories on that, because his administration, which he was the accident president, and we'll put it there, he was a lot of first things. He was still where we were in a two-party system where the vice president and the president weren't necessarily in the same party. You ran for that particular office. He didn't really want to run, but he got talked into running for his party, which back then was the Whig Party. And so he ran for vice president with William Henry Harrison, and didn't particularly get along with William Henry Harrison's party or anything like that. Didn't really want to be where he was going to be. But he agreed to do it and was elected, and then William Henry Harrison catches a cold giving his inaugural address and dies 30 days later. It was the shortest term president in the history of the country. And lo and behold, they didn't know what to do about who to make president, because there was nothing in the Constitution or any amendments yet that said that the vice president automatically ascends to that. So they went several weeks without a president. You know, now today, if the president dies in office, the next one's sworn in immediately to keep the continuity of power going. So, but finally they said, okay, we're really, that's what ought to be. The vice president needs to move up to president, and we'll just go with that. That was the precedent that was set, not the president, the precedent that was set for many years to go. And then this will shock you, it shocks me. There never was a constitutional amendment to state that the vice president takes over if the president dies in office until after John Kennedy was killed. which is just amazing because we had 2 more assassinations, with several presidents die in office naturally. And because of John Tyler, they just kept doing it that way. And then after Kennedy was killed, somebody woke up and said, we really ought to put this in the Constitution in case it ever gets challenged. And so, but you can also imagine. So John Tyler immediately made his own party mad. He made, the other party was already mad at him, so he was kind of couldn't get anything done. But his biggest piece of work that he decided to work on was trying to get Texas annexed as a state. And it went down literally to the wire to his last day, and President Polk was coming in. And so basically they gave him credit for getting Texas annexed as a state. Thus, that's why our city was named after John Tyler. Now, it's kind of a unique, kind of a cool, unique thing, because there's no other city in the entire United States named Tyler. We can even tell you that recently, right, Diane? So you can Google it. There's not another Tyler anything in the whole United States. There is a township. There's a township in Minnesota called Tyler, Minnesota, which is like a Chapel Hill. It's not really a municipality. It's a school district community. So there is that one, but it kind of comes into play for us marketing-wise because it's the only one there is. And it just this last week when we had the eclipse, we had several people named Tyler come down here. And so Tyler has been a popular name off and on for people to name children over the years. And so we've seen where that has paid dividends to us a little bit with people wanting to learn more about Tyler, Texas. And before we had the internet and people had to call or write letters to do inquiries, when I was first working at the chamber before we had internet, we had three top inquiries we had. And back then, the 3rd grade curriculum, just about everywhere in the country, a student had to pick a city and they had to write a book report about it and turn it in. So everybody in the country named Tyler decided they had to contact Tyler. So we get the top 3 inquiries we would get back then are people thinking about moving to Tyler, people thinking about visiting to Tyler, and school children. So we had pre-made packets, and it was school packet, so and so. We'd literally write the school child's report and send him all this history of Tyler and stuff like that. We don't see that much anymore. I don't know if they took the curriculum. Of course, the internet changed the whole world with inquiries, and they could probably find anything they need to find on the internet without having to call us anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, I heard something interesting today. I think I saw her earlier. I don't know if Sheridan is still here tonight or not, but from a Visit Tyler, she talked about, first of all, I want to say what a great job Visit Tyler did and the city of Tyler did for our totality eclipse event that happened last week, right? Everybody knew where to go, how to enjoy the event, but our conversation today, because they were part of our leadership Tyler class day today, is that there were a lot of people named Tyler that had come to Tyler for the Tyler totality event. And there was talk, I don't know if this was just rumor or if they were just making a joke or whatever, but there was a talk about these folks all named Tyler were going to start like an annual pilgrimage back to Tyler, Texas. And so we're going to have like the Tyler convention in Tyler, Texas of people that are named Tyler. And so it's pretty interesting that we're the only city by this name, and I know several people that have the name Tyler, and I'm sure you do as well. And so I feel like there was something, you mentioned John Tyler, and I maybe if I'm jumping ahead, tell me, and we'll back up, but there was something pretty cool about the number of presidents or mayors or governors or something that all came from the city of Tyler around the same time. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, the Tyler gang, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But back to a little quick more story on Tyler.
Okay.
And you have to discipline me because I'll talk too long and you have to get off the thing. But one thing that there were several other things that happened with John Tyler that was a first. He was the first one that had to inherit the presidency. He also was the first who lost his wife while he was president. So his wife died while he was president. And he was the first to remarry while he was president. So he's had all kinds of first in that regard. And what's fun with that, I think we billed this event as the 178th birthday of Tyler, which is true from 1846. So and I'm jumping way ahead, but in 1996, we celebrated our sesquicentennial, or our 150th birthday. So as part of that, the city did a whole year-long celebration and did all kinds of stuff in conjunctions to its birthday. And then it finished at the end of the year with a big parade and a banquet, and had all these special people, famous people that were from Tyler and all that come to a certain deal. So we found that John Tyler's grandson, who was about 56 then, was still alive. His grandson, remember, his grandfather was president in 1846. Okay, many of you have heard this story before. So we had Harrison Ford come. By the way, Harrison is still alive. He's about 97.
Harrison
Ford. Harrison Tyler.
Really Harrison Tyler?
No, it's Harrison Tyler.
Flash.
No, he's in a facility now. He has dementia really bad, so he's not in great shape. And he has a brother that's a little bit, but we invited Harrison to come back. He was at that time still living in the old Tyler homestead in Virginia, which is the only former president's house that was still going. Which, by the way, of course, I had to do this one time. I was in the D.C. area. I had to make a side trip, go to the the Tyler homestead and the great gift shop. I had to buy one of everything because it had Tyler all over it. I had to bring it all back. So I kind of get into all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but what happened was, I mentioned John Tyler had got remarried. Well, before his first wife died, he had 7 kids. He married again. He married a much younger lady. That never happens. Married a much younger lady. He had 7 more kids. So that a total of 14. He was 62 when number 14 was born. Okay? That 14th child had 8 children. The 8th child was born when that father was 60-something years old. So that's why they're only 3 generations into their family from 1846, and I'm into 5. So that's how they were still alive. But yeah, so we're gonna fast forward because I now know you're trying to keep me on track here. So you've got John Tyler. We're formed. We did immediately get forced into, of course, what was the Civil War, and so we had a small portion. This is where part of the war comes in. A couple of wars. One of the minor ones was the Civil War. Not a lot of the Civil War in the state of Texas, but Tyler had a couple things. We had a Civil War prisoner camp, Camp Ford, which still is marked today with a nice out on 271, nice reenactment type facility. It was the only Civil War federal prisoner of war camp west of the Mississippi. We also had an armory where we produced rifles, so that was our touch to that thing. Again, remember, Tyler's really small. We're talking 1,000 people at the most during that period of time. Then we're going to fast forward to the late 1800s, so 1860 to 70, past the Civil War, but you get into the 1870s. Tyler has grown a little bit more. We maybe have 2,000 people in it. But remember, Texas is still growing. People are still coming from the east, and they're settling in different parts of Texas. So East Texas, and in Tyler in particular, was one of the larger population centers because we were one of the first places they came to. Naturally, remember, they're on foot or horse or whatever to get here. Covered wagon, whatever they might have come in, as you can imagine. And so we had a lot more political, we had a lot of political clout back there. So what he's talking about, we had 3 governors in a row, governors of the state of Texas, from the city of Tyler. And at the same time we had 3 governors in a row, we also had one of our U.S. senators, and we had the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the state legislature. All cumulative, they got the nickname the Tyler Gang because they had this gang of Tyler politicos that were kind of running things. So that was where what Kelly's referring to there. And so they, and each one of those governors had a large part of the history in the state of Texas, which actually ends up affecting us. And so those three governors were Governor Hubbard, Governor Roberts, and Governor Hogg. And Hogg may be one of the more famous ones. Governor Hogg later moved to Houston in later years, and that's where his family homestead. But during the time he was governor, he lived in the city of Tyler. So each one of those governors had a piece that they were famous for. One of them, I said I was going to refer to it every once in a while. Governor Hubbard was married to my great-great-grandmother's sister. So there's another piece there. Governor Hubbard ended up living here at the end of his life. He's actually buried in Oakwood Cemetery, so you can go see his cemetery there. But what he was, one of the things he was most famous for, he was passionate about education, and particularly passionate about higher education. And he's the one that pushed for us to develop a higher education system in the state of Texas, and eventually passed the legislature that designated the University of Texas and Texas A&M to be those flagship universities for our state, and got that legislation passed. Set up a permanent fund and other things that still exist today. That was Governor Hubbard's claim to fame. And because he was from Tyler and he loved Tyler, a little side story to that, when they had to decide where to put those universities, they weren't automatically determined. So there was a debate on where they were going to put the University of Texas flagship campus. We all know it's in Austin, but it wasn't automatically put in Austin because Austin was the state capital, even though that was Austin's argument. There was such a debate, they decided to put it out to a vote to the whole state. So there was an election to see where it go. And somehow, through that, Tyler got nominated and Galveston got nominated as well. So there was a three-way election between Tyler, Austin, and Galveston. And everybody thought, well, it'll be Austin or Galveston. It will never be Tyler. And the political world got very nasty as it can. And Galveston was attacking Austin. Austin was attacking Galveston back. I mean, horrible stuff if you go back and read some of it. And they were just, really tearing each other apart. So Galveston decided, we're probably going to get beat by Austin anyway because they're the state capital. Well, we're gonna try to pull one on them. So they decided to quietly throw their support to Tyler. So the election was held, and back then they actually had incentives to say, here's why you should pick Tyler, here's why you should pick Austin. So Tyler came up with, well, we've got this building that's part of our other education system that we've been using as a higher education building, right there where Caldwell School was. Caldwell School, as it exists today, that particular building was actually the junior college, and the building in front of it was the high school, and on the part on College Street. And then there was a 2 or 3 story building that was something called Eastern something University that was our education. So we said, as an incentive, we're going to give you that building, we're going to give you everything in it, we're going to change the name of the street to College Street. That's where College Street came from. And we're going to rename the side street that it ends it to University Place, which is a little street that runs from Broadway to College Street, and probably some other things. Oh, they said they could have all the furniture in the building too. Anyway, they held the election, and Tyler won. And Austin was furious at the people of Galveston for pulling that out. And I don't know how you did that back then. And if you go that far back with elections, and remember, people are walking and riding horses in covered wagons, sometimes you didn't even know what the results of the elections were for months. People didn't know who was elected president.
That's still happening today.
Yeah. I really didn't. That, no pun intended, but yeah. So anyway, finally the state legislature said, no, it really needs to be in the state capital. So, but that was our one chance to be that flagship. But some of my friends that are in this room today, some of us that went to school in Austin, we're glad that it's in Austin. We wanted to get out of Tyler for a little bit, and we always came back, but we had to get out for a little while. So you had those 3 governors. That was Hubbard. Hogg was the one that fought the trust and the trust with the railroads. Roberts is the one who pushed for the railroads to come through our area. So they sort of offset each other. But they ended up working closely with each other and made that all happen. But they all three had very large parts in the history of the state of Texas if you go back and read them. We had 3 schools named after them for a while. We still have Hubbard Middle School. We had Hogg, but is no longer operating. And we had Roberts, which was the other middle school that's now a church, but the building's still there at the corner of Broadway and Gentry Parkway. So we had 3 schools named after him. The U.S. Senator at the time was Horace Chilton. That's where Chilton Street gets its name. And the Chilton House and Farm is the house that's, if you know where the old Gary Elementary School is, that's no longer, but it's still a TISD building on Chilton. Right across the street, that's the Chilton House. That was the Chilton family house. John and Ellen Musselman run their business out of that house now, but that was the Chilton. Now, Horace Chilton had something unique that's still unique today. So every state, as you know, has 2 U.S. senators. There's actually, it's never spoken of, but there's place 1 and place 2. That's how they determine on which one is which, and they're on rotating terms. So Horace Chilton actually was appointed a U.S. Senator because of a retiring U.S. Senator by the governor of Texas. He ran for re-election and he lost. 2 years later, the second place came open. He ran again and he won. So I learned this one day in a trip to D.C. and I was in Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison's office, and she had all the pictures of all the senators from both places on her wall, and she said, I want to point something out to you people from Tyler. Horace Chilton is the only person who held both of them at one time. No other U.S. senator ever held that. So another little bit of trivia. I love doing little trivia that maybe it doesn't really mean much, but it's kind of interesting to me every once in a while to do that.
I'm just sitting here, I don't know how many times I've sat across the table from you over coffee or lunch or in your office or whatever, and as I said when we started, I learned something new every time I sit across from this guy. I'm amazed at how much information this man has in his brain. Like, there are no notes up here that he's reading from. He's just talking, answering my somewhat limited questions to spur him on. One thing I'll say real quick is I think it's pretty cool that Tyler's kind of known as a college town. We have TJC and UT Tyler. What I think is even cooler is that we're about to steal the University of Texas's tagline. You know, it says, "What starts here changes the world." That's their tagline, but I really believe it's going to be true of Tyler, Texas, as we move forward into the future. That what starts here will literally change the world. I believe that. I believe that Tyler is going to become known. I believe Tyler is going to be famous. I believe Tyler is going to be a place, as USA Today stated recently, that is the #1 place in Texas to live right now. And so we got about a couple more minutes before we get to break, and I don't know if you can do this.
Oh, and I'm supposed to be all the way through World War II, right?
Well, that's what I'm about to ask you right now. It's like, I don't know if you can do it in 2 minutes or if you want to take the break first and then come back. It's up to you.
I can get us to 1900, maybe.
I can give you 7 minutes. How about that? Because we started late.
Okay, so I could probably get through.
So
well,
we've got through the Civil War.
we got to get all the way through the Oil and Roses before I get to World War II. So we got a long way to go.
Okay. Why don't we take a break? Why don't we do this? So we're going to take a quick break so that you can grab another beer and so that we can reconvene on our reschedule our notes here for a minute. Let's reconvene in 10 minutes, so at about 7:38-ish, we'll start back again. And then here's the cool thing is, like, when we get through World War II and we start approaching more modern times, Henry does have a story that he's going to share with us about the land we're sitting on right now. Not necessarily how Truevine got here, but the land that we're sitting on right now. And then we do have 2 special guests that I'm going to call up to the stage to help us close out the night. That are going to talk to us about what's going on today and the future of Tyler. So let's take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and pick up the story from the Civil War, move through World War II and beyond. So we left off at the Civil War.
No, we were way past the Civil War.
Well, I'm sorry. We were heading into World War II, and so just so that you know, we're kind of where we're going. Is that we need to cover a little bit of World War II, the Industrial Revolution, the war in the 60s, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your time in high school and desegregation and what that, what
Okay.
that felt like living through that, because that's a personal story that you can share. And then we come back to water, and then we close out with oil and gas.
I gotta do oil and roses before we even get to World War II. But I'll do that. I'll do that really
You do it
fast.
whatever order you need to get to, but we got 30 minutes.
So, and I'm sorry, I do get where it goes on and on and on. I can't possibly do it all in one sitting. It just wouldn't work. If you want, if we do it again, that's fine, because I enjoy doing it. I've done it at other things at Rotary clubs and stuff, but they're much shorter versions than this even is. But if you really want to dig deep in it, there's 2 volumes of Smith County history that you can get a hold of. They're at the Smith County Historical Museum. You might want to try to do it online. It's a little difficult. Never mind, we won't go to that part. They also have these 2 volumes, and this is really, really cool. I use this all the time. When we hit the turn of the century in 1999, the Tyler newspaper did a whole section called The Century of Our Lives, and they wrote complete sections. It was a 10-section special edition on each decade in Tyler, and it covers every single year from 1900 all the way to 1999. There's tons of history in there. They also have them there, but I think you can order them online. If I didn't buy them all, the last time I was in there, I was scared they might lose them, so I bought all I could see in there. And real quickly, because I didn't even know it was playing, but this movie that's been playing behind me, and somebody come up and asked me about it, it's kind of a cool story. It was actually produced by the Chamber in 54, 55. But I stumbled on it, again, ironically, the year 1998, 99. The Chamber was moving to our current location in the Blackstone building. We'd remodeled it. We had an old building, not older, an old building built in the 70s where our parking lot is now that we were tearing down. So we were cleaning that building out, and off of my office was a closet with some really high shelves. And I had to get up a ladder, and on the top of the shelves I found these big 18 millimeter reel film of something. And I didn't know what in the world it was. So I called, I think it was at the time, Brad Street at KLTV, and I said, can you all figure out what's on these reels? That's what was on those reels. And so KLTV took it, converted it for me into DVDs. But at the same time, there is a historical film preservation center in Dallas that preserves the actual film. It's heat and cooled a certain way, and that film is actually over there. And they have a really cool website if you can find it. You can find all kinds of old videos, and there's a ton of Tyler stuff in there. So you can go in there, and that video's there. That is like 45 minutes long, and if you listen to the audio, it's hysterical. It was promoting Tyler at the time, and it talks to so much detail. I go, okay, here we are at the Grand Hotel in Tyler, and on the buffet today, we have this. It's literally in that video. It's hysterical. So if you can find it online and watch it, and I still have some DVD copies if anybody has anything to play those with.
Actually, you gave me your last copy, sir.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You did. You did the last copy. So.
Yeah, so we have the last copy in our possession.
Yeah. Oh! I had forgotten. In the meantime, I ran into Pat Stacy, who had some more copies made and brought me some more. So. And I kept thinking, where is that copy that I had? It was you all I gave it to. Okay. You can probably keep that one now. So it's yours.
Okay, so the Tyler Gang.
So we're going really fast. I'm going to finish up on the Tyler Gang, and then I'm going to go really fast. And then I don't think we're going to have time for questions. Maybe we can do a whole other question and answer last time. One other cool piece about Governor Hubbard. Governor Hubbard was appointed envoy. It was called envoy back then, not ambassador, to Japan by President Grover Cleveland after he was governor of Texas. He went to Japan and lived there for several years, and when he came back, he had fallen in love with the ginkgo tree. So on a ship, he brought back several ginkgo trees to bring it back to Tyler to live. And one of his ginkgo trees he gave to a friend of his who had a farm outside of town, which is now the site of the Tyler City Hall. So one of Governor Hubbard's oldest ginkgo trees is on the grounds of, it's on the south side of the Tyler City Hall, has a plaque on it. It's been struck by lightning, but it has survived that. There's another ginkgo tree on the other side, on the north side. There are bright yellow trees that bloom that turn, where their leaves turn yellow. There's several up and down Broadway. Those are ginkgo trees brought here from Japan by Governor Hubbard. So really quickly, so we're going to finish up the 1800s. Tyler's going a little bit. You have to remember the population of Tyler, at that turn of the century, our population was all of 2,000 people. So kind of keep that in perspective. So we turn in 1900, Tyler continues to grow. We're primarily an agricultural community. We grow a lot of peaches. We grow cotton. We grow a lot of potatoes. We grow a lot of, like I said, agricultural products. We actually grow a lot of what I call ornamental plants too, which we still actually do today. So like crepe myrtles and things like that. So anyway, the turn of the century is when the industrialization started, and cars and all that kind of stuff. So things start changing fast. And so I'm going to zoom us all the way up to the 20s. And you remember all the stories of the Roaring Twenties, Prohibition, all of that kind of stuff. Positive economic times during that. Then you're getting ready to hit 1930, and we all know what happened then, right, in the country. The Great Depression. Except that Great Depression didn't happen here in Tyler, Texas, because it happened to be the same friggin' year. Can't believe I said that. And I'm not even drinking beer. What is? At least it was friggin'. Anyway. The discovery of the East Texas oil field. So things started booming around here. And the oil field changed the economy and the growth of the community forever. That small 2,000 population multiplied greatly all during the 30s. But we didn't really experience the same depression. We did have some depression, and we had some things happen during there, but for the most part we didn't. And so my fun side story with that is we had a Sears Roebuck, Sears store in Tyler. We don't have Sears anymore, do we? No, we don't have Sears in Tyler anymore. But there were Sears all over the country. Well, there was only one store in the entire Sears network in the country in that year that made a profit, and it was in Tyler, Texas. So Mr. Wood, who was the founder and owner of the Sears company, thought, what in the world's going on in this little town in Tyler, Texas, that my one store in the whole country made a profit? I got to go down there and see. So he came down here. Of course, he discovered the reason why. He couldn't exactly plant that in all the other towns he had, an oil field. So, but he was so pleased to at least have one store that made a profit, he decided to give something back to the city of Tyler, which was the original amphitheater in Burfield Park. So Sears made the original contribution, and that was all because of the Sears company, which the city has now redone several times, but there's several part of that amphitheater that are still there today. It was actually built with the public works funds that came about all after the Depression and that, as were several other things. So a lot of things started happening in the 30s. A lot of buildings downtown were built. The building I'm in, the People's Bank building downtown, a lot of them built in the 30s. So get ready. We're celebrating Tyler's 178th birthday this year, which, by the way, I wondered if we should have done anything for the 175th, but remember, we're coming out of COVID, and I went, we made such a big deal for the 150th. Let's just wait till the 200th. That way, I don't have to be in charge of the parade. I'm hoping. Maybe I could be in the parade.
That's only 22 years from now.
Yeah.
You'll still be president.
Yeah. So I have a funny story with that. I know exactly what year I'm going to die and what day, and I'll tell you that. Now, wait for that one. So let me think what I was going to cover. So obviously oil had a huge part of our history. The oil industry brought people from all over the world, brought populations from Lebanese population, Syrian population, Italian population that came in, kind of changed the culture of our community. You still have those relatives from those populations here. You know, our former state senator, head of the University system, Kevin L types from two of those Lebanese families. So changed sort of the culture here to have those people come in from the oil and gas. So the oil changed that. It's also about that time an insect blight came in. Remember, I stressed we grew a lot of peaches, wiped out all the peach crops of all our farmers out in the area. And the farmers said, we got to do something next, but we got to find a new product to grow more of that isn't susceptible to these insect problems. So they went and studied, and they all started growing roses, and that's where the roses happen. So the roses and oil almost happened about the same time. Roses a little bit before the oil, but that's where it was. And at its height, we produced rose bushes. It's the bushes that you put in your flower beds, not the long stems. By the way, there's not long stems produced anywhere in the United States. They're mainly South America right now. But we grew 70% of all the commercially grown rose bushes in the country at one time. We don't grow near that many, and some of our farmers over time, and this is part of the history I've actually lived in, grew some of them, went out and grew west and grew in California, in the Bakersfield area, in Arizona, but they're still shipped back here and processed because the processing plants are here, and labor's a whole lot cheaper than it is in California. So that was where the roses and the oil bowl come in. So now I'm really going on a tear. So then we're going to get into the next war. The other war is World War II. We had a World War II training camp here, Camp Fanning, which is out where UT North is located right now. And to give you an idea how big that camp was, that training camp was, the campus that's there now, that's 1/10 of the size that it was. And it went all the way to the interstate, and the other side of the interstate, some of the new commercial development park that Scott's working on now, that was still part of Camp Fanning. All of where Owentown was part of Camp Fanning at one time. And they were training basically men, because men were drafted back then primarily. They were training soldiers, as much as 100,000 soldiers at one time. Now, think the city population by then, by the time we got to World War II, was a whopping 30,000. So you've got 100,000 soldiers outside of town who come to town for entertainment and other things. And only 30,000 people live here. So they kind of took over the town, and there's really a lot of cool stories about military parades and all kinds of stuff. They have a lot of pictures that you can see there. But what happened with the culture there is you had men training from all over parts of the country. Well, they came to town. Well, they met people. A lot of them met their spouses. A lot of them ended up staying here, and they came from different cultures. So it was another opportunity to bring different cultures into the community that makes up what Tyler is today. So, and this is where I do a little side story on history for my family. So I have just two examples of that, both of them my father's and mother's side. So my mother had three sisters. One of her sisters met her husband at Camp Fanning. He came from a pure Italian community on the Delaware River on eastern Pennsylvania. My aunt's in-laws did not speak English. They only spoke Italian. So that's how Italian they were. So my aunt married into an Italian family on my mother's side, and then my father's sister married another soldier being trained from Pennsylvania again, but for a pure Irish community. And so my father's sister married a man of Irish descent. So our family brought in Irish and Italian, all because of World War II, and had an influence on our family going forward. Many of you probably knew the Irish part because he actually stayed here. The Italian part went back to Pennsylvania. But I had an uncle named Bill Finn who had an advertising firm here named Finn Advertising. He was that Irish soldier from Camp Fanning that my aunt married. So you can imagine, that's just two examples of how much of that happened during the war. So that's why I always throw that war part in. So I've done World War II. World War II saved the country from depression, basically. So in our area was already booming because of the oil and gas. I can tell a whole story on how when the oil thing was discovered, how that changed Tyler getting built faster than we thought it would. So had to lay bricks more. We saw a lot of dirt streets. We saw a lot of people come to town getting stuck in mud. So we had to lay a lot more brick streets at that time, when majority of them were built. So anyway, we're going to skip through that. You keep telling me how much time I have, so we get through World War II, and now we're eventually going to move into the 50s, and that's where you wanted me to tell a couple of stories where I was. So in the 50s, more industrial, a lot of growth, a lot of things happened in the 50s. I forgot to mention that what is now Christus Hospital was in the 30s. A lot of things happened in the 30s. You're going to see a lot of 100-year anniversaries coming up here soon too. So you're going to see a lot of things become 100 years old. By the way, the Chamber was started as Tyler Commercial Club on, I found the actual date this last time when I was studying, on June 2nd, 1900. So the Chamber's getting ready to celebrate its 125th birthday next year. So, but you're going to see a lot of hundreds happen in the next few years. In the 50s, you saw second hospital built here, and many GE plant, which became Train. Lots of things happened in the 50s because of the growth and stuff. That's about the time they started thinking about this land out here, which has become set by the forefathers as an industrial area, an industrial park, which is what this was originally built for. And that's how we were going to put future growth for future businesses out here. Side note on that, because someone brought it up to me earlier before I started. So we got TJC West Campus right over here to the left here. So TJC West Campus, a lot of people don't remember this. I do, even though it was in my lifetime. I remember a little bit. It was originally a Levi Strauss blue jean factory. Y'all remember that? They made female blue jeans there. It didn't last very long, and then TJC took it over, but that's what that was originally. But I'm trying to go really fast, so I'm going to leave some stuff out. So you tell me some of the stuff you want me to talk about.
You said that you wanted to talk just a little bit about the land here that TrueVine is on. And so since we're sitting on this property tonight, as we're rushing through the Industrial Revolution and things that were happening,
well, like I said,
the
the Chamber, through its industrial effort, formed a foundation, and people contributed to it. They actually bought this property out here, and then sold it off to build certain businesses that are out here. That's what it was. This was a piece that was left. The Jim's here tonight. I thought I saw Jim Loudon here somewhere. But they've developed all of this, and now you've got the TrueVine. So it's one of the most recent parts of this whole area out here. But if you go back here, some of these buildings on the roads back here have been here for many, many years, and different businesses have changed hands over it. So that's what that was.
Okay, so here's where I think I'd like to pivot, Henry, because we are running out of time, and I think it's worth hearing your experience of going through high school and desegregation and the changing of the mascots and what that did to you and your classmates as you experienced that firsthand, because that is a very personal story. You started with a story of your family going back 5 generations, and you told us a lot of the history that you've learned and you've heard from family members through the years. And now I think, so that we don't have to rush through this part, I would like for you to just maybe talk about your experience through high school and desegregation and kind of the impact that had on you and how it led you really and a lot of your classmates to be involved civically. You know, you've been on the Chamber for 35 years now, and you told me that was primarily because of what you went through in the 60s and 70s, and that a lot of your classmates then went on to be civic leaders and so forth. And so I don't want to rush through this part. We got about maybe 15 minutes or so, and so I just want you to take your time and just kind of share your personal experience, because I think that was a very impactful time for the city. It was for our country, impactful time for our country, and specifically for the city of Tyler, which really, even just a few years ago when the schools changed their name, was still kind of feeling the repercussions of that. And so let's talk through that.
Okay, so I told somebody, and I don't know if he's still here tonight, or a new friend I made today in my office, a lot of what he's really talking about in the journey, and a lot of other people in this room that went through pieces of it. So, but before I get to that, I just thought of one more thing I had to say. because I
This is
still
what
love
it's
that.
like every
I
time
still
I
love.
meet
I
this
still
guy.
love those street names. So I mentioned where my family's farm was and where our homestead was, and so to bring you back up to that. So each person stayed there over time, generation, because it actually included me until I was 4 years old, but generations after that not. But my great-grandfather was running it as a farm, and he was quite a character. He also raised, believe it or not, peacocks. And if you look today, city of Tyler, you city Tyler leaders, there's a peacock ordinance that you cannot have a peacocks in a certain area of Tyler, Texas. Peacocks make a lot of noise. So my great-grandfather was responsible for that ordinance having to be passed because he couldn't control his peacocks. So anyway, but and this kind of leads into where I'm going on some of this. And so that was still outside the town. That was really still outside the city limits. And I stumbled on this on a letter that my grandfather wrote one time, because you remember, we didn't have internet always, we didn't have phones, we wrote letters. Not my group, but a lot of generations wrote letters. That's how they communicated. So I found in some of my grandfather's letters, which was kind of some cool stuff that I did finally take to the History Center. But he tells this person in this letter that they're getting ready, that his mother, which would have been my great-grandmother, really thinks they need to widen Front Street. That Front Street is 2-lane, and she's convinced it's going to be a major thoroughfare all the way to Austin and all the way the other way east. They really ought to make it 4-lane. And she thinks that Tyler's gotten too big. It's not the front of the city anymore, which is where Front Street got its name, that they really need to change the name of Front Street. So in this exchange of letters between my grandfather, who's actually one of our congressmen, my grandfather tells the congressman, this is, well, it's actually on the city council agenda to talk about possibly changing the name. And that's where the letters stop. And so when I first read that letter, I went to Mark McDaniel, I think was the city manager then, and I said, can you go back and check the minutes? And here's what this state's letter. We obviously didn't change it from Front Street, so Front Street. What were we thinking about, and why didn't we change it? They never could find the minutes from that time that even reflected that. So anyway, I just love that story. But what my family did is, because they lived right there, and this is something that was instilled in us as we went forward, is that they wanted to share and help the community grow as a whole. So every Sunday, it was sort of a known fact that everybody in the Tyler area was invited to come to the Bell Farm for a picnic and games and fellowship. It didn't matter what side of the tracks you were on. It didn't matter what color your skin was. You were invited to the Bell Farm as a city, as a community as a whole. Many people criticized our family for that, and many people criticized it later for some other stuff that we did as a whole that we thought was better for the community. That's kind of where I come from. And so I wanted you just to hear that little bit, and that's stories that have been told to me through our lives. So what he wants you to tell about is some more recent history, and some of you have experienced. So, and I was telling the gentleman in my office this afternoon, and I kind of thought of all this together, and my classmate, me and my classmates, for our 2 years, well, we had 3 years of high school when we were in high school here then. 2 of my 3 years were the integration years and the closing of Emmett Scott. That's just one piece of what happened in about a 10-year period. So my age group was 10 years old in 1963 when JFK was assassinated. For the next 10 years, we experienced not only that, we experienced the assassination of Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy, Vietnam, the draft. Then we go immediately into high school, and where we have integration. And what happened with integration is that we had a court order and a federal judge that said, okay, you can no longer segregate. We had 3 high schools in Tyler. We had John Tyler, Robert E. Lee, and Emmett Scott. They said you can't have a predominantly one race high school. You've got to close Emmett Scott. So they closed Emmett Scott, and at that time, Emmett Scott was about the same size as Lee and John Tyler. So, and he makes this ruling about June before we're supposed to start our school year in September. And so we're forced to move half of the people from Emmett Scott. And by the way, the Emmett Scott people were not happy either. They had their high school taken away from them. They had moved half of them to John Tyler, half of them to Lee. And we didn't physically have enough room for all those people. So for 2 years, and they did. That was before portables, before they could figure out they could move portables in there. We had to go to high school in shifts. So you had to pick whether you wanted to start school at 7 a.m., 8:30 a.m., or 10 a.m., and then whatever you had to go back there. So the whole point was, and then that was the first year, and because remember it was in June. So here's these 3 sets of high school students who are finishing out their school year. They've elected their student council officers, their cheerleaders, their captains, all their things for the next year, their leadership, and they're all having to blend together. So my junior year, we had 2 student council presidents, we had 2 sets of cheerleaders, we had 2 everything. I'm not kidding, and you had to operate that way. So that was a little disruptive. Then the next year, the judge took the symbols away, which I told this person today, it's kind of interesting. They took the symbols away. They took the rebel flag. They took the Dixie. They took all those things away. It was pretty interesting time to be in high school, to say it mildly. But we lived through it. And when it really boiled down to it, that second year, which was my senior year, that was the hardest. And finally, the student leadership came together and told the parents and the rest of the older people, listen to me now, to stay out of it. We'll figure this out. We're going to have to change it. We'll come up with new symbols. So I have a whole story on how the Red Raider got picked and stuff. So my point is, with all that, we were forced to handle an adult situation that normal high school students aren't. And we'd already lived through that period of 63 to 71 and 72, where all those other things were going on. And I'm telling you what, Vietnam was probably the worst of it. We had brothers and sisters of our classmates that were killed that we were having memorials for on campus. So imagine that. So we're having to deal with all that. So I think we were a more mature group because we had to handle adult situations. And then on top of all of that, then we go to college. One positive note about Vietnam, they lowered the drinking age to 18 because they decided if we were going to get drafted, they're going to let us have a drink before we had to go to Vietnam. So that happened. But then immediately, we went into Watergate. Well, there hadn't been a Watergate, and it hadn't been a president resign ever. So we actually lived through that too. So you went from JFK to Watergate with all that in between. It kind of shaped a group of younger people that I claim are a lot of the leadership of our community and beyond today because of all that. But we had to handle all those things. And when I think back about it, then it is fairly amazing. I'm sorry, Ryan told me to keep putting it.
Yeah, it's incredible because I remember you telling me that if you look back at your yearbooks from those years, you know, as I get older, it's harder and harder for me to tell how old somebody is. I'll see a college kid and think they're a junior high kid. You know, they look so young or whatever. But looking back at your yearbooks from those years, because they had to deal with so much, they look like grown-ups. If you go back and look at high school yearbooks from the 60s and 70s, they look like grown-ups compared to the yearbooks you look at today. I go back and look at my yearbook and I'm like, look at that kid. Look how young I was, look how skinny I was and all
that. Was probably because I was already losing my hair at that point. Seriously, I was.
Henry, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your schedule today.
There's so much more.
We've
so
left
many
a
more
lot
stories
on the table tonight, and so I think we probably will try to do this again, so stay tuned. We did record this event tonight. I don't know if I said that earlier, but we did record it tonight, and so you can share it with your friends and folks that weren't able to be here or people that you know have an interest in Tyler. But thank you so much for your time tonight. Can you guys thank Henry for me?
Oh. Jamal gave me a standing ovation. I didn't do it, Jamal. Different people said, don't forget to say
you got
this.
30 seconds.
So the back, where the bank is, where all the miles of history are, there's actually 4 bells right there, and I wrote all of those, by the way. And that was where our family was in the banking business, but that corner right there is Lot 1, Block 1, City of Tyler. That's what Jamal wanted me to tell you. So that was the very first marked out lot and block for the city at that time, right at the corner of Ferguson and Broadway.
All right, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. We have a couple of special guests that I want to bring up to the stage now, one at a time. So you've heard for the last 45 minutes, hour and a half, for the history of Tyler, and we're so thankful for Henry for sharing that with us. So for the next few minutes, I'd like to bring up our mayor. So we talked about the history of Tyler. I want Don to talk about the future of Tyler and what we can get excited about. And what you may not know about Don and Henry is that they were classmates.
No.
And so they have stories on each other. And
Wrong. My brother and him were classmates. I have stories on both of
how
them.
much older is your brother?
3.
So
3
yeah,
years
they
old.
were classmates. They
Younger
were in
brother.
school
Younger
at the
brother.
same time.
Younger brother. And I forgot about this. I've been asked over and over again, why don't you write a book? Some people have said it tonight. A former classmate of mine's here even texted me and said he'd design the cover if I'd do it. And I'm actually thinking about it. I'm a horrible writer, but I've had a couple of people volunteer to be ghost writers for me. But I have tons of other history that I couldn't tell you about tonight. I have my whole set of my mother's letters she wrote to my father when he was in the service, and she worked for Judge Ramey, and she knew everything going on in Tyler, true or not, but most of it true. So when I do this book, it's going to have 2 volumes. The second volume, I'm going to put in the instructions, cannot be released until I'm gone. Because and Don will probably be in that volume.
Thank you, Henry. Everybody say hello to Don Warren, our mayor. Don, how do we get this Tyler Gang thing going again? So we have some people from Tyler that are influencing what's happening in the world.
Well,
That's a bigger question.
it's a big question. Okay, I had to back up first. Henry came to pick up my sister years ago back in high school, and he came to our house and he honked the horn. And my dad ran out the front door.
We weren't dating, it was
He says it was a church function. But my dad ran out and he told Henry to get out of the car and come inside. And so Henry came inside and goes, if you're going to pick up my daughter, you're going to come to the door and knock on the door to pick her up. So Henry's got his own version, but we did go way back. Anyway.
So one last time, say thank you to Mr. Tyler. All right, Don, the reason I asked you here tonight, and I'm sorry we're running late, Don reminded me earlier, you told me I was going to be on at 7:30. And
Usually, I'm 2 Jack Daniels in by now.
We've spent a good amount of time with Henry talking about the history of Tyler and what has kind of led us to today. And so as our mayor, can you kind of, just for the next few minutes, cast a vision on what you see the future of Tyler looking like and what you would like it to become or what you believe it can become?
Sure. You know, we are in an exciting time. And people see the city of Tyler and see what's going on, and they realize there's changes that are happening. You know, when you think about the age of people that live here, the average age is 33.7 years. And so our community is getting younger. And that makes a big impact on just the future of what's going on. And when I talk about kind of the future of the city, I consider South Tyler kind of takes care of itself. We don't really, things are going to get built out there. And so when I think about the future, I think about kind of the east-west corridor and what's happening with UT Tyler and 10,000 students and TJC with 12,000 students. The new medical school, $308 million that's going on. And then I'm going to come back to downtown in a minute, but you go further west, and we've got the new W.T. Brookshire Conference Center, and then we got the new Mayfair that we opened last week on April the 4th, which is a beautiful building. We got some work to do on the acoustics. It was a little bit loud. But then we go further west, and you got the new at Bellwood. You've got the new Brookshire's going in over there. Harley Davidson's going in over there. Chick-fil-A, and so you have so much activity going on the east-west corridor. I'm going to come back to downtown, and that's really where we're spending a lot of time and focus. And about 4 years ago, we went to some city up north of here that had hired a company called Tool Design to come and look at their downtown Sulphur Springs and to see what can we do to our downtown to make it better. And so we hired this company, Tool Design. They came here to Tyler and they showed us a vision, an idea. And it was narrowing down the streets, creating two-way streets. It was widening the sidewalks. It was slowing down cars. And the whole purpose was to create a pedestrian-friendly atmosphere where people felt comfortable walking from one part of town to the other. And when I say narrowing down streets, it literally is narrowing down streets where one part of Broadway will be 2 lanes. And there will be 2 roundabouts on Ferguson and on Irwin. And people are going to say, that's nuts, that's crazy. Well, we have had traffic studies done, and it shows that it's going to squeeze down the traffic. People will start using Beckham, people will start using Palace, people will use other methods of getting from North Tyler to South Tyler. But the whole plan is phenomenal. Now, we're at the phase now where we have hired Fitzpatrick, EMA engineers, and Haffen Associates, and we're doing the actual construction drawings for the downtown project. So we're getting to the point where by January of 2025, we're going to break ground on the new downtown. Now, we don't know what the cost is going to be. We figure it's going to be around $23 million, maybe more, maybe less. We have about $10 million set aside for the first phase. We've applied for a federal grant for $25 million, which would be nice to get that. We can do the whole thing at one time. But the whole downtown plan is so exciting, and you probably have all seen it on a video somewhere. But it's exciting with that going on, with the courthouse going on, and right now we're working with a company out of Houston on a hotel, 156-room hotel in downtown Tyler. And I'm not at the, I can't say that it's a for sure deal. I hope we can by State of the City. And by the way, State of the City is May 23rd. You'll get the longer version of what's going on in Tyler. But I'm hoping this hotel will happen. The hotel will be called the Blackstone. Now, when these people came to Tyler, they came up, and actually I called them out of the blue. Cole called them and said, we want the Valencia group to come to Tyler, Texas. And they said, we can't turn down an invite from the mayor. They came up here. We went to Fitzpatrick's office, visited with them. We went to the plaza lobby. There were people in there playing chess. There were older people reading books. There were kids studying. And then we walked up to the restaurant at Prime 102 and looked out the window, and as we're eating, they see Tyler on the marquee. They see Liberty. They see Rick's. They came back several months later, and we had the Christmas lighting at the Christmas on the square, and this little boy was lighting the Christmas tree, and the CEO goes, this is Americana. We want to come to Tyler. So I'm hoping that this whole thing will happen, and I'm wrapping up. You know, we went to Chattanooga about a month ago, 40 of us from Tyler, and we went there to see what can we learn from another community to make our city better. And 40 of us, 5 from the city, people from the TEDC, from the chamber, and we all went up there, and what we saw, this town 30 years ago had pollution. The town was dying. And I'm not comparing it to Tyler, but we wanted to see what have they done to make their city so successful. And they have a river that runs through the city. And what we saw was collaboration between everybody, between the city, the county, different companies. It wasn't people worrying about their own individual companies. It was companies coming together and say, how can we all come together to make our community a better city? We talked about lean into your strengths. We talked about what makes your secret sauce. And so when I think about our community and what are our strengths, what makes up our secret sauce, I came back just so excited about the future of what we're doing and the youth of our city. And when we left Chattanooga, they're saying, we do it the Chattanooga way. And I come back here and say, no. When we come here, we're going to do it the Tyler way. So this is the way I love it, and I love where we're headed.
Well, one of the things I appreciate about you, Don, is in one of our early email communications back and forth, in your tagline or your email signature, it said something to along the lines of making Tyler one city or something along those lines. And I love that thought that we're no longer going to be a North Tyler and a South Tyler or a West Tyler and East Tyler. That we're going to be Tyler. And we're all going to be pushing together towards the same goals and working towards the same things. And I love that we have a mayor who sees that vision, that wants to, and man, I can't tell you how much I love when he said that we're going to slow things down. I think that's what people want. I think the world needs that. I think our society needs that. And I love that the mayor of our city sees that vision and wants our people to slow down and enjoy life. And so, is there anything else you would like to say about the future of Tyler?
No, but I'm going to bring up the one thing you said, and that slogan was for all of Tyler. And you think, what's the big deal about that for all of Tyler? You know, years ago, the courthouse used to be on the square. And it separated North Tyler from South Tyler. You built Broadway, and you tore down the old courthouse, you built Broadway, and you connected North Tyler to South Tyler. Well, when we started talking about the downtown design, we talked about closing Broadway. Well, we heard from both sides of the community that said, you're doing the same thing that was done years ago. You're cutting off one part of the community from the other. And that was one of the deciding factors of keeping Broadway open, because it is all about we are Tyler
For the whole city.
For the whole city.
Yeah. I love that. So thank you very much for sharing the vision of our future. Y'all give it up for our mayor, Don Warren. I'm sorry that we were a few minutes late.
May 23rd, State of the City, WT Brookshire Conference Center, 11:30 to 1.
Thank you very much. So we have one more special guest that hung around, and I'm sorry that we're running late, but we had talked about the history of Tyler. The mayor has shared the future of Tyler. I'd like to bring up the president and CEO of our Economic Development Council, Mr. Scott Martinez, and he's going to talk about some things that are happening right now that maybe you could get excited about. So you guys welcome Scott Martinez from the Tyler EDC.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I thought I was singing tonight.
Yeah, this is not karaoke, Scott.
Okay, that's good.
So tell us some exciting things that we may not know about.
You know, I'm the new guy. I'm following two native Tylerites, and I've been here 3 years. I followed Tom Stinson in this role, who's been here 31 years, and it's just been a privilege for me and my family to be here. We have a lot of things going on in Tyler that the Tyler Economic Development Council is part of. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of the people that are here tonight. Barb Fulmer is the former chair of the Tyler Economic Development Council board. I saw Randy Roberts here earlier. He actually wrote our bylaws, and Say's involved, and you've been involved, oh gosh, 36 years in our organization. I know he doesn't. And of course, James Wynn, his family and his father, they were very active in the formation of the Economic Development Council. So I came on board just over 3 years ago, and since that time, our little office has worked on projects totaling over $300 million of new capital investment in the community. You think about, I see my friend Jeff Harris here with Delek Refining spent $132 million on their turnaround. You think about Train, they spent $76 million officially on a new 200,000 square foot building. That ended up being $103 million investment in that facility. And you think about a company like Train, they're global and they have choices about where they can make that investment. Of course, they're gonna make that investment where they can help make the most money for their shareholders. Tyler Pipe, they've been here since the 30s. Of course, that company's had ups and downs, and McWayne from Birmingham owns them. And they had a choice where to relocate a foundry from Oakland, California. We thought it was going to Birmingham. They spent $36 million on that foundry here, and will take their employment to 500 employees. I saw Tavo back there with Hood Packaging. First phase of their project was $17 million on a $34 million project. Tavo's got his fan club back there. Industrial Wood Technology, fairly new companies, $7 million. And I can, Avard Express from Cookeville, Tennessee, spending $10 million on a new logistics hub on 155 at Interstate 20. And many of y'all have heard about Yellowwood, Great Southern Wood Preserving. They bought 150 acres from a new 412-acre industrial park that we're building at 155 at Interstate 20. So their project is underway. They'll be open by the end of the year. That's about a $50 million project on this first phase and over 100 jobs. We'll have, you'll see other announcements in the next 60 days at that business park. We're working over $300 million worth of projects in that business park. And keep in mind, this property has been dormant since the 1940s when Camp Bannon was active there. So we did it, as the mayor said, our secret sauce is collaboration. I think about all the people that helped us put that project together. We're a private 501c3 nonprofit, and we don't have some of the financial resources some of our neighbors that are funded through tax dollars have. So we have to be creative, but we're still gonna do things that make sense for our community. Nathaniel Moran, when he was county judge, allocated over $4.5 million with a commissioner's court on that roadway that goes through that construction. Here's what's interesting. This is the first new county road in Smith County since the 1950s. And that was paid for with federal COVID money. That signal and all of the signal and the turn lanes, that's being funded by TxDOT with help from NetRMA. And it's just on and on. I've had collaboration to make this thing happen. But here's why we do what we do. It's about impacting families. You think about those jobs that are going to be created out there. That's someone in your Sunday school class. That's someone that you may coach Little League Baseball with. That's your neighbor down the street. And it's not just the jobs in the plants that we have to think about. You know, with this facility, we've had a lot of professional services in Tyler that have benefited from that. Potter Minton Law Firm, Southside Bank, Brandon Corporation. I just go down a list of Fitcher Construction, A.E. Schull, that have been active in helping us put that together and benefited from it. So, you know, my job every day is to show companies they can make more money in Tyler and Smith County than anywhere else they're considering deploying capital. Because it's about profitability for those companies, and people is a big part of what makes them profitable. Because here's what happens, and y'all have heard me say this before, profitable companies, they give people paychecks. With those paychecks, people are able to put food on their table, clothe their kids, and tithe at their church. And I think we can all get behind those things. So, anything you want to ask? I know it's been a long evening, but...
No, I mean, is there anything going on right now or on the horizon that you're at liberty to share with us, that something we could get excited about, something we could help?
Yeah, you know all the white vans at the airport? There's nothing, you know, there's so many conspiracy theories related to that. I mean, we're gonna move illegal immigrants, all kind of things. You know, I thought, here's the thing with those vans. It's a company based in Indiana, bought a company here called Lone Star Mobility. They bought the company to shut it down so a competitor would not buy the company. That's the reality of it. They get down here, they love the workforce, they love the community, and I'm happy to announce they're gonna spend $35 million on a new facility in our new industrial park and take their employment to 300 people. So there's no conspiracy with the white vans. They just don't have anywhere to park them. So they lease space from the city to park those vans. There's nothing weird going on. It's nothing to do with illegal immigrants, you know, unless they're in a wheelchair. I guess we're going to get across the river and give them a van. I don't know. Y'all figure it out. But there's nothing conspiratorial going on with those vans.
That's awesome. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Hey, so I don't know if you realize it or not. Oh. Yeah, those chairs will do that to you if you're not careful. So, you know, as I grow older, I'm resistant to change. I think most people are resistant to change. We're creatures of habit. We like things the way they are. But what you've seen tonight from 3 different individuals is that this city cares about preserving the history and the legacy of what has happened here before. We have someone that is new to the city, as Scott said, that is trying to help us move forward and what can we do today to improve our city that we love. And then we have a mayor in office who's looking to the future and trying to make sure that we're ready for change and that we do change the right way. And so I just think it's awesome that as innate as resistance to change is for most human beings, that we live in a city that cares about preserving the history. We want to take care of the present the right way, and we want to plan for the future the right way so that we change the way that we are supposed to change as a city, and that we do it the right way, preserving the history and moving forward, maintaining that legacy that got us to where we are today. And so one more time, I'd really like for you to help me say thank you to Henry Bell, Don Warren, and Scott Martinez for sharing with us tonight.